The phone rang at 1:17 p.m. It wasn't just any ring. It was the kind of tone Marlene Whitaker had programmed for emergencies. Her hands, still warm from the coffee she held, froze midair as she looked down at the screen. Dover Elementary. Something inside her chest buckled. Her first instinct was flu, maybe a scraped knee. Maybe Aiden got dizzy again like last week. She answered fast. "Hello, Mrs. Whitaker," the voice on the other end said, tight, shaken, unnatural. "This is Principal Garner. I need you to come to the school immediately. It's about Aiden." Her brain couldn't process what she was hearing. "What do you mean? Is he hurt?" There was a pause, just long enough to destroy her. "No, he's missing." The world blurred around her as she drove, tires screeching out of the parking lot of her office building. Red lights didn't exist. Her breath stuttered. Every worst-case scenario her mother's brain had ever imagined came screaming to the surface like sharks smelling blood. The school loomed ahead, a small, white building tucked in a quiet part of their small Massachusetts town. Blue and red lights flashed violently across the playground. She parked on the curb, jumped out. No time for anything but motion. "Marlene," a teacher called, rushing over, "Miss Hilson, the art instructor." Her hands shook. "Where is he? Where's Aiden?" Marlene demanded, eyes darting to the playground. Police tape. Empty swings. Teachers gathered in small, tight circles, whispering with wide eyes. "I don't know. We don't know. We were out for recess. I swear he was just..." Hilson stopped, pressing a fist to her lips. "He was just there. On the swing. Then he wasn't." Marlene felt the ground tip under her feet. The playground, the sandbox, the monkey bars, nothing moved except the tape fluttering in the breeze. Aiden had always loved the red swing. He called it his rocket. Now it hung empty. Detective Lou Vega arrived 30 minutes later, his trench coat collar turned up against the wind. Late 50s, graying hair, eyes like worn leather. He walked with quiet purpose, but the way he scanned the scene said he wasn't new to this. "Mrs. Whitaker?" he asked, walking up gently. She turned, mascara smeared, fists clenched at her sides. "Are you going to find my son?" Vega nodded. "Yes. We're going to do everything we can. But I need you to help me by staying calm." "Calm? My 6-year-old boy is gone. From school. I understand. But the faster I get answers, the faster we move." He turned to the principal. "Tell me everything." A timeline was sketched quickly. Aiden was last seen at 12:07 p.m. on the swing set, talking to another boy. At 12:12 p.m., the aide noticed Aiden was no longer in view. By 12:18 p.m., staff had begun calling for him. He wasn't in the bathroom, not in the nurse's office, not behind the shed or the trees or in the hallway. By 12:30 p.m., 911 had been called. The entire school was locked down. No child saw Aiden leave. But 4 teachers and 1 student remembered something strange. A janitor. He was pushing a trash bin near the playground gate, one teacher said. "I didn't recognize him, but I figured he was new." "Same here," another said. "He was wearing the school uniform, blue jumpsuit, gloves. Had a badge, I think. I didn't get close." Principal Garner stood pale. "We haven't hired a new janitor." "Are you sure?" Vega asked. "Positive. Our staff hasn't changed in months." "And security footage?" Vega asked. We don't have cameras on the field. Just inside the building." Vega nodded. "Let's see it anyway." The inside footage showed nothing suspicious. No one in a blue jumpsuit. No man pushing a bin. But when Vega reviewed a student's phone video filmed during recess for a TikTok challenge, a brief shape could be seen in the background, just outside the fence line. A blur of blue. A man walking behind the chain link. Dark hair. Mask on. Gloves. Not close. Not detailed. But there. He zoomed in. It was just enough to make your skin crawl. He was watching them, Vega muttered. Later that afternoon, as the sun began to dip and the playground turned golden and cold, a kindergarten teacher searching the sandbox made a quiet, horrified sound. Vega and Marlene rushed over. Half buried in the dirt, near the swings, was a piece of paper. A child's crayon drawing. Stick figures. A sun in the corner. One stick figure had red hair, like Aiden. The other was a man, in all blue, holding the child's hand. The man had no face, just a black circle. Written above the drawing, in a shaky hand, were 2 words. He smiled. Marlene collapsed to her knees, clutching the drawing, sobbing. Vega didn't speak. His eyes were fixed on the faceless man in the crayon sketch. He'd seen monsters before. but this one came with a smile. If you felt your heart race with every turn of this story, let me know where you are watching. Subscribe now for the next chilling part of Aiden's story and join us as the mystery deepens. Your click could be the light in someone else's dark. Stay with us. It was past midnight when Marlene finally stepped through her front door. The house felt like a museum now. Everything frozen in time, the pile of coloring books on the coffee table, Aiden's tiny sneakers by the door, the half-finished cup of chocolate milk in the sink. She stared at it, hands shaking. He had begged her that morning to let him bring his red toy car to school. She'd said no. Tomorrow, she told him. Tomorrow never came. The silence wrapped around her like plastic, suffocating. Detective Vega hadn't stopped working. He had no intention of sleeping. He sat at his desk in the Dover precinct, staring at a freeze frame of the TikTok video from recess. The blue figure at the edge of the field, a man blurred just enough to make him ghost-like. No facial features, no badge, just movement. He flipped to the footage again. Same route, same blur. The guy moved along the fence, then disappeared behind the maintenance shed. The only way into the school without being seen by staff was through that back fence, beyond the trees. And the fence? It was cut. Vega's jaw tensed. Wire clippers. Fresh slice. Clean edge. Whoever this man was, he came prepared. By morning, FBI agents had joined the search. Amber alerts had been issued across New England. Flyers. Social media posts. Every square mile of forest around Dover Elementary was being swept by police dogs, drones, and volunteers. Marlene watched from her porch, her nails digging into her palms as strangers walked past her lawn with searchlights and whistles. But by noon, there was still no sign of Aiden. And no answers. Vega returned to the school. "I want staff records," he told Principal Garner. "All custodial contracts, all third-party vendors, everyone who ever had access to the property this year." Garner handed him the files reluctantly. "I checked. No new hires. Our janitor is Mark Weathers. He's been here 7 years. Where's he now?" "Home. I told him to stay out of the school until this settles." Vega narrowed his eyes. "Let's pay him a visit." Mark Weathers lived alone in a small single-story home on Beach Lane. Lawn uncut. A rusted pickup in the driveway. He opened the door in slippers and a Patriots shirt, blinking like he hadn't slept in days. "Detective Vega? We need to talk." Mark's voice cracked. "Is this about the boy? You tell me. Where were you between noon and 1 p.m. yesterday?" Mark rubbed his face. "On my lunch break. I eat in the boiler room. I never leave campus. Did you see anyone else wearing your uniform yesterday?" Mark stared, confused. "No, I didn't see anyone." "You didn't go out to the playground?" "No. I never go there unless there's trash or a mess." Vega scanned the man's eyes. He looked broken, tired, but not guilty. "Still," he said, "we'll need you to come in for more questions." Back at the school, something else was brewing. A first-grade girl, Ellie Morris, was brought in with her parents. She'd been silent since the day Aiden vanished, but that morning, during morning circle, she'd said something strange to her teacher. "I saw the blue man." Now, seated in a small office with a counselor, Ellie held a crayon in her tiny hand. "Can you tell us what he looked like?" the counselor asked gently. Ellie frowned. "He was tall, like my dad, but thinner. Was he nice?" "He waved at me," she said. Then he walked to Aiden. He knelt and said something. I couldn't hear, but he showed him something. What did he show him? Ellie picked up a red crayon and drew a square. It looked like a phone, but it had pictures. "What kind of pictures?" Ellie's lips trembled. Pictures of kids. Some were sleeping. Some were crying. Everyone in the room fell silent. Then Ellie whispered. "He told Aiden, 'Do you want to see your brother?'" That line hit like a gunshot. Aiden didn't have a brother. Meanwhile, at the precinct, Vega reviewed janitorial supply deliveries for the past 6 months. One vendor stood out, Clean Swift Services, a third-party cleaning contractor hired occasionally to do deep cleans over long weekends. He picked up the phone. "Give me a list of every employee that's ever worked for Clean Swift in the last 3 months. Especially anyone with access to Dover Elementary." The woman on the line sounded confused. "Sir, Clean Swift never serviced Dover Elementary. That's not one of our clients. But I have a delivery slip with your name on it." "No, sir. That's not one of our accounts." Vega froze. "So who dropped off the supply cart last Friday?" A pause. "We didn't." The cleaning supply cart Vega retrieved from the janitor's closet looked normal: broom, mop, bags. But underneath the bottom tray, duct taped to the underside, was a cell phone. Locked. Old model. Battery nearly dead. He handed it to forensics. Within an hour, they had it cracked. There were no names, no messages, just a single folder titled Collection. Inside were 42 photos. Children, playgrounds, schoolyards, parks, all in Massachusetts. Different kids, different towns, all taken from far away, behind fences, bushes, windows. Each photo had a timestamp. One of them was Aiden on the red swing. As Vega stared at the images, his throat tightened. This wasn't a one-time abduction. This was a pattern. Someone had been hunting, watching, cataloging, and now they had escalated. That night, Marlene was visited again. The house was quiet when she noticed the mail slot creak. She walked to the door. Nothing there. But as she turned to leave, she saw something sitting on her welcome mat. A red toy car. Aiden's. The one he hadn't been allowed to take to school. She fell to her knees, sobbing, clutching it to her chest. Whoever took her son had been inside her home. It was the scent that hit Marlene first. Bleach. Not the kind used in bathrooms, but industrial, acrid, and layered thick over something rotten. She held her breath as she crept back into her house, clutching the red toy car. Every inch of her skin buzzed with dread. She hadn't touched that toy in 2 days. She knew it had been on top of the fridge, far from Aiden's reach. Yet here it was, sitting on her doormat, freshly wiped clean, placed like a trophy. Had the intruder been inside again? Had he ever left? Marlene forced herself to look at the walls, the windows, the locks. Her hands trembled as she dialed 911. Detective Vega arrived 20 minutes later with 2 officers and a forensics team. He greeted her with a grim nod, then asked her to step outside while they swept the house. She did. She sat on the front steps like a ghost while neighbors gathered under porch lights, whispering. Nobody looked her in the eye. They were all thinking the same thing. She's cursed. After half an hour, Vega returned. No signs of forced entry. No prints. But there are shoe imprints under the window in the laundry room. Size 12, work boot tread. Marlene shook. He was here. While I was out searching, he came inside. How? Why would he give me this? She opened her palm to show the toy. Vega didn't answer. Instead, he turned to the officers. We're moving her to a hotel under watch. Set it up. That night, Marlene sat in a cheap motel room with the blinds drawn, unable to sleep. She turned the toy car over in her hand. The paint was chipped on one side. Aiden had dropped it down the stairs once. She remembered the sound, the tears, the way he had cradled it like it had been hurt. Now it sat quietly in her palm. A message, a threat, or maybe a clue? She leaned closer, holding it under the lamp. There was something underneath, something thin. She used her nails to pry it open, and her heart skipped. Taped under the car was a tiny piece of paper, a number, scribbled in red ink. 6. Back at the precinct, Vega reviewed the photos from the burner phone again. There were 42 pictures, different kids, different locations, and next to each image, on the corner, were faint numbers, nearly invisible, some etched, some scribbled digitally. 1, 2, 3. Then he saw it. Aiden's photo, swinging at Dover Elementary, was marked #6, just like the paper Marlene had found. 6. Not random, not chaos. This was organized, sequenced. This wasn't a kidnapping. It was a collection. The next morning, a teacher from Dover Elementary called Vega in a panic. She had remembered something odd from the day Aiden disappeared. I didn't think it was important, she said. But now... What is it? Vega asked. The janitor closet door. It was open during lunch. That never happens. Mark always keeps it locked. But that day, it was wide open. I thought maybe he was working in there. Vega's pulse quickened. What's inside? Just supplies. But sometimes teachers store old school equipment there, lost and found stuff. And oh. She stopped. What? There was an old uniform. A janitor's coverall we kept for Halloween decorations. It was in there. You're telling me someone could have taken that outfit? She swallowed hard. Yes. Vega tore through the closet himself that afternoon. There it was, empty hanger. A space where a dark blue coverall once hung. The same exact shade as the blurry figure in the playground footage. A costume. That's all it took. A lie told in fabric and confidence. Someone had walked into the school dressed as a janitor, and no one questioned it. They just assumed he belonged. And in a school full of children, assumptions were deadly. In the meantime, the FBI team combed the metadata of the burner phone. They found GPS stamps attached to the photos. Each had been taken from public parks or school grounds across different towns, spread out, months apart. But 3 of them, photos number 4, number 6, and number 9, had coordinates that formed a triangle. Vega printed a map and plotted them with red pins. Dead center of that triangle was a forgotten strip of land, an old state highway rest stop that had been shut down 5 years ago after budget cuts and accidents. Overgrown, abandoned, exactly the kind of place that didn't belong to anyone. He stared at it. "Get the dogs," he said. "We're going in." The old rest stop was 30 minutes out of town, surrounded by pine trees and dead brush. They parked half a mile away and walked the rest. It smelled like mold and oil. Cracked pavement split underfoot, weeds growing through the seams. Rusted vending machines stood like gravestones. Behind the main building was a drainage pipe, large enough to crawl through. That's where the dogs stopped, barking, clawing. Something was down there. Vega pulled his gun. Flashlights in. "Let's go." They moved slow, crawling through the pipe for 40 feet before emerging into a chamber of forgotten filth. Rancid water. Broken pallets. Rats scurried past. But what made everyone stop was what lay in the corner. A sleeping bag. A lantern. Old water bottles. Crumbs. And a red spiral notebook. Vega flipped it open. The pages were numbered, 1 through 10. Each had a name. Each had a description of a child. What they liked. How they walked. Where they played. Favorite colors. Friends' names. And next to each name, a photo glued to the page. Taken without consent. Some smiling. Some alone. All unaware. The 6th page? Aiden Hayes. Vega's voice was hoarse when he called Marlene. "We found something. He's been planning this for months." "Is he there?" She whispered. "No. But we're close. He's watching from somewhere. We just don't know where yet." "Why Aiden?" A long silence. Then Vega said, "Because he was next." Later that evening, as Vega sat alone reviewing the notebook, he noticed something odd. There were more than just photos and notes. Page 9 had a sketch. A crude floor plan. Looked like a warehouse, with a red X on one side. He brought it to the forensic artist, who enhanced the layout. They recognized it. The dredge, an old mill down river, abandoned since the late 90s. It had been condemned and shuttered, but never demolished. And it was just 15 miles away. The next morning, a tactical team surrounded the dredge. Doors were chained, windows boarded, but the eastern basement access had been broken recently. New bolts, fresh scrape marks. They went in, room by room. Silence. Then they heard it, a faint electronic beep, coming from the far end of the basement. A motion sensor camera, still active. Freeze. Hands in the air. But the room was empty. No people. No sign of Aiden. Only an old mattress, some food wrappers, and a wall, covered in photographs, each pinned with thumbtacks. Labeled. A timeline. Faces of children. Some had red excess over them. Others were circled. At the center, larger than the rest, was a Polaroid of Aiden. Underneath, one word was scribbled. Gift. It was the sound that made Vega stop. Not the cameras. Not the creak of his own boots on the warped concrete floor of the abandoned mill. It was a drip. Steady. Sharp. Like a heartbeat leaking. He stood before the wall of photos, Polaroids pinned at jagged lines like a hunter's display of trophies. Some images were curled from moisture, others marked with slashes of red ink. X. But Aiden's wasn't like the rest. His photo was pristine. Centered. Tacked down at all 4 corners. Below it, gift. Vega didn't know if that meant Aiden was alive or already taken away. He didn't know what game the kidnapper was playing, but he knew one thing. There was something behind that wall. The search team arrived an hour later. Forensics. K-9 unit. Crime scene investigators. And a man from demolition, licensed to breach walls with control tools. Vega circled the area. There's something off about the architecture. This wasn't in the original plans. He pointed to the left edge, where an old ventilation shaft had been sealed with cinder blocks. Open it. They tore the panel away slowly, carefully, like peeling a scab. Dust poured out, choking the air. Behind it was a narrow crawl space, no more than 2 feet wide. They sent a camera in first, mounted on a flexible rod, with a tiny light. What they saw chilled them. A small room, wooden floors, a thin mattress, a box of toys, and in the corner, a pair of tiny sneakers, one upright, one toppled sideways. Vega's chest tightened. Get in. Now. The space was too narrow for most, so Officer Shelby, a smaller woman, slid through first, flashlight in hand. Shelby, Vega called. Do you see anyone? A pause. Then, oh my God. Inside was a crude cell. Soundproof foam on one wall, black garbage bags duct taped over the others. There was a bucket for waste, a single camping lantern, and a set of scratch marks on the wooden beam above the mattress, tallied lines. 5. But no child. Aiden wasn't there. Only signs of him. Shelby crawled out, pale and shaking. Sir, it's a holding space. He had Aiden here. Vega nodded, jaw clenched. And now he's moved him. Where? Vega didn't answer. Not yet. His mind was racing. This wasn't a one-time event. This wasn't messy or impulsive. This was planned, methodical, personal. Back at headquarters, they examined the names from the notebook again. 10 in total. 6 matched children who'd gone missing over the last 3 years across 3 counties. Some were still open cases. Others had gone cold. The last 4, 7 through 10, were still marked as pending in the notes, which meant the bastard had a schedule. He was following a sequence. Aiden was 6, already taken, but the others could still be saved. Marlene sat quietly in a conference room with an FBI liaison, her hands wrapped around a mug she couldn't drink from. She stared straight ahead, hollow-eyed, while the agent explained everything. He didn't break in by force, the agent said. He slipped through cracks, disguises, timing. He exploited routine. Marlene blinked slowly, like a predator, one that studies its prey. Yes. She shuddered. He watched my boy, picked him, out of everyone. The agent nodded. But why call him gift? She asked. Why that word? The agent hesitated. We think he may see certain children as special, more than trophies, possibly emotional surrogates. Surrogates, children who remind him of something or someone he lost. Vega met with a psychological profiler that afternoon. What kind of person builds shrines to stolen children? Vega asked, eyes bloodshot. The profiler sat across from him, silent for a moment. Then he said, someone who believes they're saving them. Vega scoffed. Saving? That bastard is stealing them. I know, but in his mind, he's likely convinced the world is hurting these kids. He plays a protector, a savior. It's a twisted narrative, but for some of them, that's enough justification. Vega rubbed his face. So Aiden isn't just a target. He's a symbol. Yes. And if the word gift means what I think it does. What? The profiler leaned in. He won't hurt Aiden, not right away. He'll keep him. Pretend he's his. Vega froze. And what if someone gets in the way? The profiler's eyes darkened. Then they get removed. Late that night, a breakthrough came. A tech analyst was scrubbing old CCTV footage from Dover Elementary 2 days before Aiden vanished, when she spotted something odd. A white delivery van parked across the street. Not school property. No logos. Just watching. She zoomed in, frame by frame. At minute 3:42, the van's window rolled down. A face. Blurry. Male. Middle-aged. Beard. Hat pulled low. She ran it through facial recognition. No hits in the criminal database. But there was one match in social records. Marcus Sly. Age 47. Former maintenance contractor. No current address. Fired from 3 jobs in 5 years for erratic behavior. But that wasn't the kicker. What mattered was where he'd lived before. An hour from Dover. In a trailer. With a woman named Carla Sly. And a boy named Jeremiah. Both deceased. Wife, cancer. Son, accident. Age 6. 10 years ago. The final piece snapped into place. Marcus Sly lost his family. Then he disappeared. Until now. Vega stared at the file. Jeremiah Sly, his son, would have been 6 years old when he died. Aiden's age. Blonde. Green eyes. Just like the photo from the mill wall. Vega slammed his hand on the table. Get every unit we have. Find that van. Find him. But the van found them first. That night, at 2:13 a.m., security at a gas station outside of town called in a tip. Guy just paid cash. Wearing coveralls. Drove off in a white van with plates peeled off. Vega raced to the scene. The clerk gave a rough description. He looked tired. Wild. But calm. What did he buy? 2 packs of crackers. Bottled water. Batteries. Flashlight. Anything else? The clerk hesitated. Yeah. He asked if we had coloring books. Vega's gut turned. Which direction did he go? East. They tracked him through traffic cameras until the trail went cold. He turned off-road, into the woods, back toward the abandoned rest stop, but this time further. There was an old trail once used for logging, now swallowed by trees. And at the end of that trail, a hunting cabin, not on any map. Vega and the team approached before dawn, lights off, engines cut, silent. They circled the cabin, no movement inside, curtains drawn, chimney cold. Vega nodded to the SWAT commander. Go. The door cracked on the third strike. Guns drawn, they flooded in, room by room. A lantern, a mattress, and in the back, a small boy, sleeping, alive. Aiden. Marlene dropped to her knees when they brought him home. He was dazed, thin, but unhurt, and when he saw her, he broke. Mama. She ran to him, wrapped him in everything she had left, cried into his neck, held him like she'd never let go. Marcus Sly wasn't found at the cabin, but they found another list there. Names, dates, and one more Polaroid. From the gas station, a little girl in the background, unaware she was being watched. He wasn't finished. The sound of the morning news was still humming through the kitchen when Detective Vega saw the face again. It wasn't on a wanted poster, not on a case file. It was on TV, a blurry gas station still. A replay of the moment Marcus Sly bought crackers and a coloring book. The clerk was being interviewed, reciting the same lines Vega had heard in person. But it wasn't the footage that caught Vega's attention. It was the little girl in the background. Blonde hair, pink backpack, and a name stitched into the strap. Emmy. She's real. Marlene whispered as she sat beside Vega in his office later that afternoon. She's next. Vega nodded, staring at the Polaroid they recovered from the cabin. She's on his list. The last one. Emmy Darnell. 7 years old. Lives 2 towns over. Attends St. Martin's Elementary. Her mother works evenings. The father, unknown. She matched the pattern. Single parent. Accessible schedule. Public school with low security at dismissal. It was like Marcus had a checklist. Only this time, they were ahead of him. The school agreed to a full security detail, plainclothes officers, staged surveillance vehicles, and staff who had been briefed not to panic the children or cause alarm. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then on day 4, the librarian saw something strange. A janitor she didn't recognize. She remembered him clearly because he had a mop and bucket, but she couldn't recall seeing him clean anything. She asked his name. He said Dennis. She looked away for just a moment, and he was gone. The footage was checked again. Hallway cameras, parking lot feeds. He was there for only 6 minutes. Enough time to test the waters. Vega cursed. He's casing the place. He wants to be sure. The team moved fast. Marcus Sly wasn't just observing anymore. He was prepping. And Emmy? She was running out of time. That night, Vega returned to the cabin they'd raided. Something was still bothering him. Aiden had been left there, unharmed, as if Marcus had suddenly abandoned the plan. Why? What changed? Vega stepped back inside. The air was damp. The lantern still hung crooked on its nail. But now, something smelled wrong. He followed it to the crawlspace behind the mattress, where thin wood planks had been pried loose. Inside was a small lockbox. He pulled it out, broke the latch, and opened it. Inside were letters, dozens of them, old pictures of a boy, Jeremiah, newspaper clippings about a fire, and one envelope labeled, the last one. If they find me. Vega opened it. Inside, a photo of Emmy, and a single sentence in jagged handwriting. She's just like him. But I'm tired now. Marcus Sly had cracked. Maybe guilt finally crept in. Maybe he knew they were close. But the letter made one thing clear. He wasn't going to take Emmy. He was going to say goodbye. But where? The next day, Emmy's mother called the police in a panic. A letter had been left on her front porch overnight. No return address. It simply said, "He's watching over her. She'll grow without fear. Tell her she is loved. I'm going where Jeremiah sleeps." And the return stamp? Hickory Falls Cemetery, Lot 6, Grave 112. The sun was setting when Vega arrived with a small team and a trauma medic. Grave 112 sat beneath a large elm, its headstone cracked from years of neglect. Jeremiah Sly, 2006 to 2012, forever in our arms. And next to it, a freshly dug patch of disturbed dirt, shovel tracks, and the edge of a white sneaker sticking out. Vega drew his gun. "Marcus, Silence. He moved in slow. Then, a cough. Weak. Shallow. The earth shifted, and a hand emerged from the loose soil. They yanked him out. Marcus Sly, half buried. His face gray, his lips cracked, his eyes swollen shut. A bottle of pills beside him. Only half the bottle gone. A suicide attempt that hadn't worked. Yet, they rushed him to the hospital. He was fading fast, but conscious. When Vega entered the ICU, Marcus opened one eye. "You win," he rasped. Vega pulled a chair close. "Why Emmy? Why any of them?" Marcus stared at the ceiling. They were lost, like Jeremiah. I wanted to save them. From the world. From people who stopped seeing them. Just ghosts. He coughed. Blood in his spit. "But you weren't saving them," Vega said. "You were hiding them. Making mothers grieve. Making children afraid." "I kept them safe," Marcus whispered. "I never hurt them. Your son died in a fire. You couldn't save him, so you took others." Marcus's lip trembled. They looked like him. Every one. And Emmy. She's the last. The one who smiled at me. But I knew it's over. I don't want to do it again. Not really. Vega leaned in closer. "Where are the others?" A pause. Then a whisper. "The orchard. North side. Under the well." At dawn, a team descended on the long-abandoned Sly property. There, hidden under rotting boards and weeds, was an old well house. They found a trapdoor built beneath it. And inside, a room. With beds, blankets, coloring books, and 4 children. Alive. The media explosion was immediate. For found alive in hidden bunker. Serial kidnapper admits to guilt in deathbed confession. Detective Vega cracks one of the most bizarre abduction cases in state history. But for Vega, it wasn't about headlines. It was the way Aiden hugged his mom every morning before school now. It was the moment Emmy ran to her teacher with a drawing that showed a scary man who didn't take her. It was the silence in the courtroom when Marcus Sly pled guilty to 6 counts of kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, and psychological trauma. And it was the moment the judge said, "You took children to replace a ghost, but they will live. And so will your memory of what you did." Epilogue. 3 months later. Marlene opened the front door to find Vega standing there, dressed in plain clothes, holding a small package. "Aiden drew this. Said he wanted you to have it," Vega said. She opened it. Inside was a picture, a man with a badge, standing beside a little boy holding a balloon. At the bottom, "Thank you for finding me." She blinked back tears. "You saved him." Vega shook his head. "He saved himself. We just listened." As he turned to leave, she called out, "You'll be all right, won't you?" Vega smiled faintly. "I think we all will. Thank you for staying with us through this harrowing journey. If this story gripped your heart like it did ours, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves true stories of courage, darkness, and hope rising in the end. Subscribe now for more deeply human stories that leave you thinking long after the final word. You never know what's waiting behind the next door or wall.